What's up? How is it going? I wanted to demo today a scene that I had purpose built for my camera plugin that I released a couple months ago. It is a high energy shot tracking a vehicle, which normally would take a little bit of effort to get going, but with my plugin, it's pretty quick to get some really, really nice results. So let's not waste any time and let's just dig right into it. So this is the scene in question. It is a really simple setup to get going, which is really nice. You can see it's a lot of energy in here, and it's actually only one camera, which is really, really cool. And I'll show you a trick for doing a single camera intercut system like this with my plugin. And it's literally just target switching, which is really, really cool. And you can also then, not target switch if you don't want to. You could also do a lot of overshoot. But this scene has a lot of, camera bounce, a little bit of overshoot, depending on which mode you're using. And so I'm going to break this down in a new scene and how you'd start this setup from scratch to get a similar result. So I'm just going to pause this really quick here. And this is the new scene. And as you can see, it's literally just a bunch of obstacles on the ground. I just drew the spline out from the top-down view and cleaned it up a little bit. And all I did then is I attached my car rig to the spline. You can see it drives along. And if you're normally going to use a lot of different camera cuts, I would also probably switch the spline path on the vehicle to linear if you're going to show a lot of the beginning and end. Otherwise, you'll have to crop in and out of that motion, just going from hard cut to hard cut. But for now, we can just leave this like this. And what we're going to do is in database, so my plugin, there's one for Octane and Redshift. We're literally just going to drag the camera out. We're going to make it a child of my little camera nulls here. And in here, there's two things that come with it pre-default. There is a focus object and a target object. So because we're going to be tracking a high energy thing such as a moving vehicle, we're going to want to attach these two things to the vehicle. So the really easy way to do that is, if we collapse that, we're going to go into the car rig. And I have a null here called model root. That is the dead center of the vehicle. We're going to grab both the focus and the target. We're going to dump it into model root. And then we are going to reset transform them. So now you can see they're in the center. And then in my camera rig, let's just break off this window. It'll be a little bit easier to see in the viewport as we're live playing this back. You can see I already have the target predefined on the target object. That's just built straight into the plugin. If you don't want to track a target, you can turn that off, and I'll show you reasons why you would want to do that later. So the next thing we're going to do is we also want the camera to follow along the spline path as the animation happens, because you can see if you don't, it's stationary. So let's do that as well. So in here, we're just going to find our spline object, which is this spline here. And so now the camera is attached to the spline. You can see it's now facing along it, but there's no animation happening. So what we'll do is we'll drop a keyframe at the beginning. And then at the end of it, we will drop another keyframe. And now if we were to look into the camera, so as we go along, you can see it's following it. Well, I mean, it doesn't really help us right now because it's not in a great position, but we're going to fix that real quick. I'm going to turn my floor back on just so it gives us a little bit easier to see what's going on with the ground. Might take a second. There we go. And now let's start manipulating the camera. So the first things first is we're going to probably want to position this up a little bit. Here we go. And then in here, there's a focal length option. So I normally shoot cars at like a 100 millimeter lens. It's just a little bit, more elongated and more dynamic. It's going to be nice and tight up on there. You can even do a 200 millimeter lens and then just push the Z back to F. But we'll do something like this around here. And so I basically started off real close to the right. And so you can see with target enabled, these other settings won't work, but you could enable them, or you could disable the target and then do that manually. And once we kind of lock in the animation, we can turn this on and off if we want to. So this works okay for a starting shot. Probably pushing a little bit. Let's just record some keys at the beginning. And I'll record these as well, just anyways. I'm not going to change the focal length, so I can leave that there. And what I want to do is I want to, at some point, I'm going to want to do a double target system. So I'll leave that unchecked for now, but we'll do it later. Then another really cool thing I like to do, especially when I am doing tracking of vehicles, I'll turn on auto keying, because that way I can very naturally, as the thing is moving, I can make decisions on the fly. It's pretty nice that way. So let's say we want to go from one side of the vehicle to the other side. So we'll just change that and shift a little bit. Want to probably switch that bank. And you can also keyframe the position of your targets too, which is pretty nice. But for now, we're just going to kind of lock this in a little bit. Let's see here. Maybe that'll work. And then let's change the Z depth a little bit. So we'll start there. And we'll go forward a little bit. And let's then modify some other pieces. Yeah. And we can swing back around. Let's just go ahead and get nice and close on the right here. Could be nice, yeah. And so right around here, we're going to do a target switch. So it's going to, I'll just let this play back real quick. Yeah, so maybe it's a little too much. Let's just expand this so we can kind of see what's going on. So let's just make this longer. Somewhere around here. It's a little too much. Let's dial that back. Yeah, okay. And then so now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this target that we've got here. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm just going to name this target 2. And then what I want to do is I'm actually going to move this further up in front of the vehicle. And then what I can do is I can now keyframe this and say, so right here is when the first target hits. I'll just go forward a frame. And then now I'm going to swap out that target object. Okay, and it's going to switch. It looks kind of silly now, but what I'm going to do then is I'm now going to change the camera angle. So maybe we'll go back over here, drop down a little bit below it. Okay, so something like that. And so if I let this play back real quick. So you can see it's basically creating a nice hard cut where it's coming from, you know, a little bit further back. And then it just slams right down below, which is pretty cool. What we'll probably want to do, though, is move that camera so it doesn't hit this object right here. So that's very easy to do. I'll just shift this up maybe a little bit. Maybe it'd be kind of cool if it actually... Yeah, let's see what that looks like. And you can always then do a hard cut back if you want to. It's a little bit much. We'll pull this back, I think. Let's just do one of these. Let's just pull that down. And I think what I'm going to do is actually just extend some of these out. Yeah, so it's not so fast. I want to fix this drop down. I'm not a huge fan of it. So what we'll do is we'll just shift this over. So in here, let's just do something a little bit different. I'll just shift that over that way. Let's see what that looks like. And then what we can do, since we're switching targets, one of the things I like to do is make it instantaneous. I'll just put it on top of it, and it'll be a little bit more imperceptible to switch, so you can see it. It just depends on sort of what you're going for. But we should be okay like that. I just want something that's a little more frenetic. And then so we'll just go for it a little bit more in time. And then let's say around here somewhere, we're going to shift the camera again. So we start pulling back, so it's sort of the end of the shot maybe, and we want to connect this to another shot somehow. So we can kind of shift over to this side maybe. It could be cool. Do a heavy Dutch. Yeah, so let's see what that looks like. And what we can do actually is, as this is happening, let's say we're going to position this off. So that way it'll just kind of like go in front. And then what we can do is we'll, let's switch the target back again. So just manually drop a keyframe there and then go forward one frame. And let's just throw back that initial target. And then let's say maybe over here, we'll move the vehicle back. Yeah. Let's see what that looks like. It's a bit silly, but it's pretty high energy. So probably what I would actually think would be really cool is if we, at some point here, we can like switch to we'll build another shot for the interior, so like inside the car. So what I'll probably end up doing is we'll change this here. So instead of it going from this side, we'll have it stay on the one side, because then we'll just do another cut later. So let's just manipulate this a little bit. It's kind of cool. Yeah. It's a little bit better. Yeah, so I think that works so far. And so now let's go ahead and do some things like add in some camera shake. So in the last tab over here, I've got two options. I've got camera shake and overshoot. So there are some presets that I built that I thought looked pretty nice for different, depending on, the size of the object that you're trying to track. But so let's just start off with minimal, and we'll kind of like work our way through this and see what we like. So maybe it's not enough. So let's set it to a shake frequency of 2. And that's cool is you can, with these presets, you can still change all these features. And it's not going to matter so much. If you want to do a custom shake, you will need to switch to the custom shake settings. But you can go ahead and change the frequency depending on what presets you chose. So this is pretty cool. I'll just do craziness. I'll just show I'll crank this up so you can see it's nuts. Less is more with a lot of this stuff. So maybe 2 might be too much. So the higher you go up in your settings, so you could do like maybe a 0.5, so it'll happen far less. But I want something that's a little bit frenetic. So what we'll do is actually I'm going to switch this to custom. I'm going to put this back to like 1.5. And let's say we'll just pick some numbers that I think look cool. Just something subtle. I can probably crank this actually at least one of these values. Yeah, let's dial this back down now. And then, so let's say you did want overshoot. Well, you can turn the target off because basically what's happening with the target is it's locking the camera to always be on position. So if you want overshoot, you would turn target off, enable it. And what you could do then is you can see the camera's flinging on about. And depending on the kind of shot you're going for, this may work. I put 2 demo shots on the Gumroad page, one with overshoot enabled and one with it disabled. So let's set this real quick. So we'll just do like an overshoot frequency of maybe like 0.3. Let's just reduce this. And what we can do actually is if you wanted to do with overshoot, now you have your camera pitch. So you could go in and start keying these to get them on, on target a little bit more. And then you would just go through and then keyframe them. In my case, I want to use the targets, so I'm just going to re-enable that. But again, that's how you would do that. Is you would the easiest way to do that would be to start with a target object, get it kind of locked in, and then turn it off. And then now you have options for banking pitch for your actual camera. So how the camera would swivel, and then you can adjust your overshoot settings with that way. Other really cool stuff for Redshift. You've got your exposure settings. You have, depth of field. So a lot of these have been pre-populated for you to make your life easy. So in this case, again, it's the focus object, which, is right here. I normally use bladed, but, you can go ahead and use circular, whatever you want. And depending on, what your settings for the camera, you're going to want to change your aperture. So like for, 1.6, 1.8 is fine for this right now for a 100mm lens. With the focus object being used, this focus distance is going to matter. If you were to clear this, you could then change your focus distance. Obviously, we're not in render, so you won't see anything, but just showing you how that feature works. And let's see here. What we could do is, let's say you want to check some composition stuff. You could also enable all that. Your focus frustum prane. You've got, let's see. And, if you wanted your golden sections or your golden spirals, you could totally do that. Which is pretty cool. So I think I want to adjust the shake settings a little bit. So we can go ahead and let's just turn that stuff off. We'll just check this again real quick. It's okay. We can probably adjust that a little bit. let's say we just change the seed value. And I'm going to crank probably the Z. Let's see what that does. Yeah, it's a little bit more frenetic. I think that's pretty cool. And so let's say, for example, you wanted to, do another shot, right? So, if you're going to comp this in later. So somewhere around here, I thought it'd be pretty cool to put a camera inside the vehicle. I actually rigged the steering wheel for this, so I thought, ahead of time it'd be kind of nifty. So let's go ahead and do that. You can either go ahead and just, drag the camera out, or what we can do is just go grab one from the database. So I'm just going to grab one of these. I'm going to actually make this a child of the vehicle because that's where I want it to sit. So I'm going to go back to model root, go into here real quick. Let's just reset transform it. Let's get out of this camera real quick so you can see this. So you can see it's now at dead center. Let's actually rename these. This is another cool feature. You rename this parent layer, it will automatically rename the camera. So in this case, we're going to call this follow. So that way, if you were in Redshift and you had your viewport window open, your IPR, you'll have distinguishing names for this. I wanted to create something that was really clean so that you wouldn't have all this excess stuff you didn't need. So we're going to go ahead and call this cockpit camera. Oops, I forgot the word cam. All right. We're going to have to go change some settings in here. So let's go ahead and take this target object. In this case, we're going to move this forward a little bit. We're going to want to go ahead and change these. Let's close this out. There we go. Lock this back up. So now we're on the right one. You can see it says cockpit cam. So we can actually just do -180. Let's start with the 35 and then move in. So, and then what we can do actually is we can just go ahead and just shift it. I wanted to allow some for manual movement in here as well. So this doesn't necessarily need to be a slider. So let's position it somewhere in here. And probably what I would do is actually maybe throw the camera wide. Which would be kind of cool. Maybe it sits a little bit higher. It might be a bit excessive to see that in motion at like a 15 or like a 20, but fuck it, we'll just leave it there anyways. And if you wanted to, you could also turn off target now that it's locked in and then manually manipulate that. But for now, we'll just leave that into play. So you can get to see what's happening is, it's now in the cockpit. And so because there's no camera shake, it's, it doesn't seem natural. But let's go ahead and enable camera shake. So we're going to just switch this to 2. We'll just pick a preset. Oops. It's a bit much, right? So we'll just go back to minimal. Something like that. Maybe that's even a little bit too much in this case. So we'll just go to custom now. And let's just say this is like 5, maybe 10. Okay, 2. And we can lower that interval or for the shake frequency. So we can probably put this like 0.5 maybe. A little bit more. 1. Okay, that's not bad. Could be better, but for our purposes for right now, this isn't too bad. And then let's say, for example, since this is locked, what if we were to turn off the target? We'll just manipulate the headings a little bit. Set that to 0. No, that's not bad. We can go ahead and reposition this a little bit. And then now what we can do is let's turn on overshoot. Small numbers will go a long way on this. Custom, and let's just say something like that. Yeah, like 5 degrees there. That's too much. Well, like 2. And so it's really cool is that now, you've got driver cam, and you could go ahead and change the Z depth as well, and the focal length to try and like balance that out. So it's not so tucked in there, but for this purpose right now, you can see it's in there. So what we'd probably end up doing is, if we were to switch to this other camera, you'd probably cut in, somewhere around here. And then you would just cut into this cockpit angle while, in post. So you would just render out 2 different takes. And I think that would look really, really nice. So that way you have, some different angles. Or what you could do, a lot of times, if I'm not really sure where my edits are going to be, if my edits are going to be more of an editorial edit versus directorial edit, I'll end up just rendering the whole thing, the sequence that I need. And then I can always cut to it, and I have, buffer room to cut to it later. So one thing that would be pretty cool to make things a little more fun, let's switch this out. We're going to add in some drifts for the vehicle. So that'll give us something a little bit more dynamic movement on this vehicle as well. So let's so let's say right around here, right? And this is what I did in my other video as well. If we go to our controls, I have this disabled. So visible, we're just going to switch this to components, controllers. And what I want to do, make sure, let me just very quickly turn off the ground real quick. Yeah. So I'm going to set a keyframe for this. Oh, come on, autosave. Okay. So I'm going to set a keyframe. So somewhere maybe around there. And then as it hits that apex, let's just, oops, I grabbed the wrong thing. Hold on. Yeah. Let me delete that because that is the absolute wrong thing. And let's set that keyframe and then go back, and we can just manually push that back. Normally what I would do is selectable and change that to components only. Sometimes you'll end up grabbing the wrong thing you don't want. So you get this like pretty crazy wide drift. And then what we are also going to want to do is manually change the tire rotation. So let's just make sure. Yep, I grabbed the right controller. Let's just say we'll do a little bit of an overcompensate. Yeah. So let's just go ahead and look at the follow cam just to kind of see what things are going. And then we'll want to shift that back. And let's say this is now going to slam back in the other direction. So let's just let this play back and see what's going on. So I got to fix the tire rotation on the front of it. So it's actually a little bit too much. Let's just move this really quick so we can see our steering controls. Yeah, that's not terrible. It needs a lot of refinement, but you can kind of get the idea is that we're adding a little bit more dynamic movement to it. And then let's just go ahead. Yeah. So if we were to now switch back into the cockpit camera, you can see you get some fun steering wheel turns. And it'll normally turn with the auto steering on along the spline, but you can also like take control and kind of like over exaggerate movements depending on where your drift is. But this is pretty much a really, really easy setup to get to where I was. You know, if you need a lot more time, you can get even further along. And it really, with auto keys turned on, it's literally just a matter of going through, scrubbing, finding angles that you like, and kind of refining it from there. So if I were to just, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the, so that way we're not getting cluttered. So you can see. And so one of the other things that's really cool with a high moving object is making sure you've got chassis sway, especially on a vehicle. So in my case, I'm just using the Cinema 4D car rig, but if you go to controls, you can just change up the chassis vibration to what you want. You change the amplitude. It works like a vibrate tag essentially. I also sometimes will use a static delay, which is great for adding shock absorption, but it ends up causing some issues, usually with wheel tracking suspension. So what I'll normally do is I will set a keyframe at the beginning and set it as 0. And then probably like around 20 frames in or whatever, you can go in and set your set. You don't need a lot. A little goes a long way with this stuff. So something like 14. And if you had like a very heavy drifting shot or a shot where a vehicle was slamming onto the ground, you'd get really nice suspension drop. And so this is pretty much the breakdown of the camera. There's some other really cool features into here that's kind of like baked in for when you're dealing with IPR stuff, like your exposure. All of your lens effects are built into the plugin as well for Redshift, so you can have all this access right here without having to open up multiple objects. The idea was to build something that was really easy to use, takes the existing features that Redshift has, and allows you to manipulate it very cleanly in your viewport. So I hope this is pretty helpful. I'm going to have a lot more in-depth videos of different scenarios of using the camera rig, tutorials, and like how would you do these certain kinds of shots. And hopefully that will be helpful to you. All right. Peace.